Have you noticed how most conversations begin with a tired ritual? A dull exchange of, "Hi, how are you?" met with the equally lifeless reply, "Fine." Yet rarely is anyone truly fine, and rarely does anyone truly care to know. It is a dance of masks, an old chant repeated by habit. What would happen if, instead of this mechanical noise, you entered a conversation with presence? Not with clever tricks or manipulative lines, but with a few words that dissolve the mask and invite another person to be real. Think of the peculiar magic that occurs when you feel understood. Someone looks at you not with haste, not with a restless urge to reply, but with patience. They listen, and then softly say, "I understand you." In that moment, something inside relaxes. You are no longer left outside the gates knocking. You are inside, welcome. Most of us live surrounded by people and yet feel alone, not for lack of company, but because no one pauses long enough to say those words. The truth is, to be understood is rarer than to be loved. For love, as society often sells it, can still be laced with possession, with need, with expectation. But understanding is a pure acknowledgement that your inner world is valid, that you are not absurd for feeling what you feel. And when you offer this gift to another, you become unforgettable, not because you dazzled them with charm, but because you touched the core. In our modern world of constant distraction and social fragmentation, this simple act is even more radical. We live in an age where communication is abundant, but connection is scarce. Millions of words are exchanged across screens every second, yet so few penetrate beyond the surface. We scroll through carefully curated lives, yet ache in silence for someone who will simply say, "That makes sense to me." When you tell another human being, "I understand," their inner storm subsides. In that calm, they find relief, and relief in a world of constant anxiety is magnetic. Attraction is not about dazzling others with brilliance, nor is it about proving superiority. It is about becoming a presence in which others can rest. But understanding demands humility. You cannot truly understand if you are too busy rehearsing your next clever reply, nor if you are intent on being the smartest in the room. To understand is to put the ego aside and say, "Here is a fellow traveler, walking a road I may not fully know, but I can see the shape of it." And when people sense that in you, they no longer resist, they lean closer, they soften, for they no longer have to fight to exist in your presence. You have made space for them. And that space is rare in a culture obsessed with noise, competition, and performance. Amid the relentless chase of consumerism, endless debates, and the fragmentation of relationships strained by comparison, what people long for most is not to be impressed, but to be seen. Now imagine you are speaking with someone and you say, "That makes sense." A small phrase, almost trivial, yet how powerful it is. For what you are truly saying is, "I have listened. I have received your thought, your feeling, and it has found a place in me. It has landed." Most people never receive this gift. Their words scatter into the void, met with distraction, with impatience, or with the shallow nod of someone already waiting to speak. But when a person hears "that makes sense," their heart eases. They feel less alone, accompanied at last on the strange road of being human. And so, without realizing it, they grow attached to the one who mirrors them. This is not empty agreement. To tell someone that makes sense does not mean you must think as they do. It simply means you honor the path by which they arrived. Recognition is enough. The Stoics called this tolerance, to let another hold their view without needing to crush it. And in a time when global discourse feels like a battlefield, when relationships splinter under the weight of endless arguing, when nations themselves seem locked in cycles of domination and pride, what could be more radical than simple recognition? Consider the words "you are right." Such a simple phrase, yet it satisfies a longing we all carry, even the proudest among us. To be told you are right is to feel seen. But here too sincerity matters. Spoken carelessly, it becomes flattery, and flattery is counterfeit. But spoken with truth, it disarms. Imagine a quarrel where tempers rise, each side determined to win. Suddenly one says, "You are right about that." Instantly the heat dissolves, the wall softens. For in truth, what people often seek in argument is not victory but validation. And paradoxically, those who yield gain more respect than those who must always win. For the insecure guard every inch of ground, while the wise know when to bow. The world today is riddled with insecurity. Corporations clinging to power, governments refusing to admit error, individuals terrified of losing face. And yet, how magnetic it is when someone lays down the sword and chooses truth over pride. The one who bows does not shrink, they expand. In their presence, others feel safe, and where there is safety, there is trust. This is why such words linger. For most conversations today are contests, not connections. Words used as weapons, social media feeds crafted as battlefields of opinion, dialogues reduced to point scoring. But when you say you are right, sincerely, you step out of the war. You show that your concern is not ego, but truth. And people find that irresistible because it is so rare. In this light, to listen, to validate, to yield, is not weakness but strength. It is the strength of presence in a world addicted to performance. And presence is the one thing we are starving for. For in a time when everything is packaged, purchased, and consumed, even love, even identity, what we crave most is not more products, but more reality. And reality begins when someone truly listens. There is yet another word, perhaps the simplest of all, and yet the most neglected. Listen. Strange, isn't it, that such a small act can feel rarer than gold? We live in a world where nearly everyone is speaking, but hardly anyone is listening. To listen is not simply to wait for your turn to reply. It is not to nod politely while secretly polishing your next line. To listen is to enter another's world without the urge to rearrange it. When you say, "I'm listening," and truly mean it, you offer a gift almost no one ever receives. And what a magnetic gift it is. Because when someone feels listened to, they feel real. They feel alive, as though their presence matters in a world that otherwise treats them as background noise. You have given them space to unfold, without interruption, without correction, without the pressure to be impressive. This, you see, is love in its purest sense. Not necessarily romantic love, but the love that recognizes. And how strange it is that though we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, we have inverted the lesson. The noise of the world grows louder each day, screens flashing, notifications buzzing, voices shouting across digital platforms. Never before has humanity spoken so much, yet never before has it felt so unheard. We talk across each other, we argue across nations, we consume words like products, and still, loneliness grows. To listen is therefore revolutionary. In a consumer society where everything is measured, where even time is monetized, to give someone your unmeasured attention is to step outside the system. It is to declare, you are not a commodity, you are not content, you are not a transaction, you are a being, and I am here with you. This act of presence is not just kindness, it is rebellion against a culture that fragments us into data, into profiles, into economic units. And notice how, when you truly listen, you dissolve the performance. People return to you not because you dazzled them with wit or beauty, but because you gave them the rare experience of being heard. And when you think of it, isn't that what we all crave? Not constant approval, not endless entertainment, but simply to be allowed to exist, unchallenged, for a moment. The secret of all these words, understand, make sense, you are right, listen, is not that they are techniques. The moment you treat them as tricks, they die on your lips. Their magic lies in sincerity. When you embody them, you stop performing. You begin allowing. And in that allowing, others blossom. Think of a flower. You cannot pry open its petals by force. You give it water, soil, light, and patience. Then one morning, without effort, it opens. So it is with human beings. Offer presence, recognition, and listening, and they unfold of their own accord. And when they unfold, you will find that you attract not through effort, but through ease. For this is the paradox. The more you chase, the more people retreat. The more you perform, the more they sense the strain. But when you stop chasing, when you stop performing, and simply become a space in which others feel alive, they are drawn to you, not because you tried to be magnetic, but because you became real. Every time you begin a conversation, you stand at a fork in the road. One path is the ritual, "Hi, how are you?" And the answer, always predictable, "Fine." The exchange dies there, 2 masks brushing past each other. The other path is presence, a chance to begin not with habit, but with awareness, And in that choice, the entire encounter shifts. If you enter with sincerity, if you open the door with one of these phrases, "I understand, that makes sense, you are right, I'm listening," the whole atmosphere changes. What began as a polite formality can become unforgettable, even life-altering, for the essence of connection is not performance, but recognition. But let us not be too solemn. Words are not chains. They are invitations. They are play. And when you treat them with curiosity and humor, they work best. To understand, to validate, to listen, these are not burdens, but ways of saying, here we are, two ripples on the same ocean, meeting for a brief moment before flowing apart again. Why not share something real, something alive? After all, the purpose of communication is not to impress, but to touch. Attraction is not built on cleverness, but on whether the other feels safe, valued, and seen in your presence. And you do not need brilliance for that. You do not need power, beauty, or endless wit. You need only to be awake, to meet another without the restless urge to manipulate. And strangely enough, when you stop trying to win people over, they come closer. Why? Because in you they sense freedom, and freedom is contagious. The one who listens reminds others how to breathe. The one who understands reminds others that they belong. This, too, has meaning far beyond individual lives. For what is true of two people in a room is true of humanity at large. Nations speak endlessly but rarely listen. Politics, like our daily conversations, has become a contest of domination rather than a search for understanding. And just as individuals fragment when no one truly hears them, societies fragment when groups shout without recognition. The result is polarization, division, the slow unraveling of shared reality. And at the same time, our planet itself is crying out for recognition. Climate change, species loss, the collapse of ecosystems, all of these are voices we do not yet know how to hear. We speak louder, consume more, argue longer, but we do not listen. And just as a human being withers when unheard, the earth too begins to wither beneath our indifference. To listen, then, is more than politeness. It is survival. It is to recognize that you are not a separate fragment, but part of the same symphony, whether in your relationships, your communities, or the wider world. To listen is to restore connection where fragmentation has taken root. So when you break the ritual of conversation, when you dare to speak with presence, you are doing more than easing another's loneliness. You are practicing a way of being that could heal not just one heart, but entire cultures. You are living the truth that communication is not a transaction, but communion. That dull little ritual, "Hi, how are you?" is like knocking on a door that never opens. And yet most conversations begin this way because we are afraid to break the script. But you need not repeat the old chant. You may instead try something fresh, something that startles the other into wakefulness. A phrase like, "Tell me something good." So simple, yet so surprising. It jars the mind out of autopilot. It demands reflection, not routine. Imagine beginning like this. Instead of the dull back and forth, you ask, "Tell me something good." At once the other pauses. They must stop, search, remember. Perhaps they smile, recalling a small joy. Perhaps they share something meaningful. But whatever it is, the conversation has already leapt beyond the ordinary. It is no longer a script. It is alive. And in that aliveness, you stand apart. You are no longer another polite stranger lost in the blur of routine. You have awakened the other, and in awakening them, you awaken yourself. This is the essence of presence, to be awake with others, rather than sleepwalking through rehearsed phrases. Most people move half asleep through their days, bound by rituals and cliches. But if you dare to step off the conveyor belt of habit, if you dare to say something fresh, you bring color back into human contact, and that is unforgettable. Attraction, connection, love all arise when two people are willing to step out of the automatic and into the real. Sometimes the doorway is as small as a single phrase. Not a strategy, not a trick, but an invitation. "I understand. That makes sense. You are right. I'm listening. Tell me something good." Each of these is simple. But in a society that confuses noise for communication, they are rare, and what is rare becomes precious. When you live this way, you do not need tactics for attraction or formulas for belonging. You have become attractive simply by being real, and when you are real, others feel safe to be real with you. Whether with a friend, a lover, or a stranger, your presence becomes a gift. and those who receive it will remember not your cleverness, but the ease, the authenticity, the lightness they felt in your company. And here lies the deeper truth. In a world fragmented by consumerism, loneliness, and the relentless pressure to perform, presence itself is rebellion. To give your attention, to listen without agenda, to validate another without condition, these are acts of freedom. Freedom from the machinery of performance, freedom from the mask. For what is attraction, truly? It is not conquest, it is not manipulation, it is recognition. Recognition that the other is real, that you too are real, and that for a brief and sacred moment two lives touch without demand. This, at its core, is love. And love, in its simplest form, is not something you chase. It is the space you create, the silence you honor, the presence you embody. It is the light that warms others, not because you try to shine, but because you cannot help it.